Hey, there we go. Good morning. Oops, I'm on the wrong scene. There we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it might be where you are. Welcome back to the live stream. My name is Jeff Fritz. I'm at,
Just resubscribed for 8 months.
thank you so much for the resub. I'm at Microsoft Ignite, and I'm joined today by Amy Kapernick. Amy, it's so good to see you. Thanks for joining me here today.
No worries. Thanks for having me here.
So, we're, right, yeah, we can hear you there. Um, why don't you give folks a quick introduction to who you are and what we're doing here?
Well, I'm based in Perth, Australia.
Okay.
So, come, not too far, only about 36-hour trip to get
Oh,
here.
gosh, 36 hours. Are you kidding?
Yeah, I had someone complaining to me this week as well about how they had to travel 16 hours and how long that was. And I just went, 16 hours sounds amazing to me right now.
Yeah, right? There's so much more you could do in 16. Audio levels, let's see what we can do here. We can get those a little bit louder. I can push a little bit more. One second, one second. How's that? How about now? We'll get there. We will get there, chat room, I promise. I think that's a bit better. Layla codes it, says Amy. Yeah, there we go. So, my gosh, that is a really long flight to come here to Microsoft Ignite.
Yeah, it is really long, but it's also been an amazing week. So I'm really glad I got the chance to come, although really looking forward to just getting home and being able to sleep in my own bed. So.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So, I mean, we're here. It's the end of the week. It's Friday. We've had an amazing. Have you had a good Ignite?
Yeah, it was my first Ignite, and it's a bit unreal. Sort of, it's hard to describe it and set expectations to anybody who hasn't been before.
20 bonus
A little bit overwhelming at times,
Sure.
but it's been amazing, and I think they've definitely set expectations for conference after parties for me from now on.
So, for those of you that don't know, when Microsoft hosts Ignite here in Orlando, the after party, the attendee party, is at Universal Studios, and they close both parks. It's a private party, and it's just the attendees. So, thank you so much for the cheers, Fava. And is that Insomniac? Thank you so much for the subscription, joining us for the first time. Thank you for that. And I make donations for all of our subscriptions and cheers this quarter to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Very cool to be able to support those folks as they're trying to fight the war on childhood cancer and other nasty diseases that kids have. So it's great to be able to support them. Now, your expertise, right, is in something that I am all thumbs at. You're really good with CSS.
Yes, yes.
More than that.
My primary languages are CSS and HTML.
Okay.
I do a little bit of JavaScript as well because it's
We're
really
waiting to hear
hard.
it.
It's really hard to touch the front end
Yeah.
without using it, but I like to put a lot of focus on CSS and HTML because there are so many things that you can do with it these days, and it's really, I mean, HTML is literally the building blocks of the web, so it's really important.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, so that's the primary languages that I work with.
There were the horses. Thank you in the chat room. Thank you, Boom Boom, for helping us out with that. Yes. So, I know the microphones and our names down below are a little bit backwards. It's okay. We'll deal with that. So, and the number. See the number right here in between us here.
Yep.
That's the chat room sentiment. So I didn't have a chance to explain this to Amy. So it's between 0 and 100. Of course, when it's above 50, it's very positive, and the arrow is just a trend, which direction it's going. The smiley is the most recent messages, whether they're happy or not. And you'll see folks like Copper Beardy here drop some tacos that should come flying by on the screen, but I don't see them just yet, to encourage some happiness there. So that's a little bit about what's going on there. I've had some problems. I am all thumbs when it comes to CSS. Once things got to HTML5, all of my HTML knowledge about using tables for layout. Do you see this already, chat room? Do you see this already? Went out the window. I am no longer right? Able to think properly about this.
Hello?
Okay?
Anybody home? Hey,
Yes.
think, McFly, think.
I know we can use CSS for layout, and I'm terrible with it. So I've relied on Bootstrap and some of the responsive layout frameworks to help me with projects. But there's more we can do now, right?
Yeah.
So right, there's FlexGrid. I understand. There's some other things that we can do with CSS natively in CSS3.
Yeah, so well, for layout, you're really looking at two options. So there's Flexbox, which has been around for a while,
Okay.
which a fair few developers are aware of, and the browser support for that is pretty good.
Okay.
And then there's also CSS Grid, which has been around for about 2 years now.
Okay.
A few less developers know about that one, but that's something that I've been working on this year, is trying to let developers like yourself know about Grid and how it's a really good option and an alternative to Bootstrap.
Okay. Yeah. Bootstrap, I feel like, was a great way to get us something that isn't table layout. Gosh. And now, yeah, I feel like the next step I need to take in my learning process is get Flex, get Grid, and really take advantage of some of the capabilities here.
Yeah, so it was good, and it gave people an ability to get started without when they weren't too comfortable with CSS, but it also meant that all of our websites look the same because
Yes.
they're all built with Bootstrap's 12-column grid.
Yes.
And what CSS Grid does is it gives us the ability to do even more, and it's still just as easy. So I've been speaking at conferences this year about CSS Grid,
Okay.
and we literally mock up the layout of an application in about 10 minutes with 7 lines of CSS for CSS Grid.
Oh my gosh.
So
Oh my gosh. You're saying the right things here for me, and I really need help with that because, yeah, the applications that I've been working on, I'm clearly not doing that. We've been building a distributed chatbot, right? The idea is we want to build a chatbot that folks can log into a website, say use this on my channel, but I want to have nice configuration panels, a nice about page that tells what's going on here, and it's. I've been holding off on design and layout because I'm all thumbs. I'm terrible with this. So would you mind taking a look at it with me? This is using Blazor, a little bit of ASP.NET Core, but it's all generating HTML.
sure.
Cool. So I've already set up live share with us. So if Amy said no, I'd be in really big trouble, okay, because I already set up live share. And we're going to take a look at the project now. I have right here in Visual Studio 2019, and Amy's over here using Visual Studio Code. There we go. It's right there above us. So here's the application, and I'm going to run it, which will actually run it on both of our machines at the same time. She'll be able to get a connection over live share to my machine, so she can see what we're working with here. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to set this as the startup project, and we will start this using that. There we go. So this is an ASP.NET Core 3 project using Blazor server-side technologies. So we can put CSS files down, and they'll be served appropriately to everybody that requests them. Now, we should see this automatically trigger a web browser, a shared server over and pop on your machine when things get running. There we go. I can see it starting up over there. Now, we're not sharing Amy's machine so that she can mock me mercilessly over here while things are going on. And over here, we'll do it live on my machine so that all of you can see what's going on here. And you can immediately see that I'm already getting hammered here on, I've got bad connection credentials. Nice. Thanks so much. What did we do? I don't want to mouse over these things in front of, and show values here in front of everybody. Give me 1 second here. Let's just take, this is part of the fun of what's happening here. Oh, okay. None of my user secrets have come along here. Well, that's going to be real. Am I in release mode? Nope, nope, nope. Containers, containers, containers. No, no, no. Manual mono mix down for the win. Yeah, sometimes we could do that here in OBS, but I'm not going to jump on that. Give me 1 second here. I got to go find my settings. Should be coming through. I have a user secrets here, and that should be Oh, I don't have it on this machine. Oh, crap. Oh, darn. Oh, darn. Oh, golly gee. I'm trying to be family friendly, I promise. Where do I have those so I can grab them real quick there, chat room? I have them on Azure. So I haven't been working on this application locally here on this machine. I've been working on it on my home machine, so I put all my files, all my things inside of a user secrets file on that machine so that I don't inadvertently check it into GitHub.
Yeah, I accidentally did that the other week. I moved my Twilio API credentials to an environment file.
Okay, yeah.
To do the right thing, make sure it wasn't committed, but I forgot that they were actually listed in another file as well.
Yeah.
On the bright side, I did actually immediately get an email from Twilio letting me know that my API key was in a public repository.
Oh, that's nice.
And linked me to the guide on how to refresh my API key. So
Yeah,
learned
that's
not to do
looking
that
out
one.
for us, right?
Yeah.
1 second. What's going on? Super Viking, thank you so much for the resub. There we go.
I did actually learn a useful trick then, which I do now, which is to create an environment example file for each of my projects, which doesn't list values because I always forget what environment variables I have per project.
So I am right there with you in ASP.NET Core. What I've done for just a similar process, I haven't finished loading my settings here yet, but I have, you can see right there, this is my default settings, exactly like you're saying, that I need to copy in and fill out for my secrets on this machine. So I'm just going to pop back over here 1 second, and I need to copy in. I'm going to start with this because, where is it? Manage user secrets. So I will delete these. I'm okay with that for right now. I don't need the authorization yet. I'm not going to do any of that login. I won't use that. That's fine. And that's fine as well. So I just need the ability to log in for my bot. So I can show this. Over here on Azure, I have the configuration for my bot. I think I should be able to copy this out because I have Azure Mask turned on. So I have all my settings copied out here. So here's where my login is. I can click to actually show it. I don't want to show it to all of you out there. So I'm going to turn this off, grab that, right, and I should be able to copy the current value, post that in, and of course it's top secret here. Don't let anybody see that.
Except for me.
Except for you. The number of times that I've doxed myself and accidentally shared all this information is just amazing.
It's fine. We all do it.
We all do, at some point or another. So, now let me restart that. All right, let's take a look now. Now that my user secrets are saved, this should load up. And yeah, it's got some bad auth0 information. That's okay. We're not going to actually log in yet. And there we go. Fantastic. So Amy has the browser also on her machine, and she can see we are garden variety Bootstrap here. It's kind of a thing.
Yep.
So, right, and then we're going to try and fix this. So good to see. Let me say hello to some of our friends. There's Coding with Luce. Good to see you. You love some Twilio. Chef Brent. Good morning, Chef Brent. Hello. Boom Boom. Yeah, with the end then. Thank you. Already on top of us like this. Who else? Janescu, we said hello to. We said Super Viking. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Saw your favorite Twilio champion was live with Jeff and couldn't stay away. Look at that. Space Cat, thanks for the love. So it's a simple layout at this point, and underneath the About is a couple of blocks here that they set up as cards so that they do flex and scale appropriately. We want to be able to have some information about, okay, the bot was built live on stream, where to download and get a copy of the bot if you want to run it, so we'll put some link information in there. And then a nice, I did the end then. At the bottom about, well, here's some information about the community that built this, some of the contributors we want to show off their names. So Carrie, thank you so much for the cheer. Yes, the add some value from Scott Guthrie.
Terminator 250 bonus 25
so-
messages managed.
How do this? I think I understand a little bit what some of the folks from the chat room did to build this. The home page, I want to be able to put a quick log. I want to get rid of the login up here and put login somewhere here so that it's easy for folks to see how to log in. There's a configuration page that I can, after I put the auth0 information back in here, we'll be able to get to. And configuration is something that I think needs to be extensible for this project. So there are different features that you're going to be able to turn on and turn off that, thank you for the follow, that would be nice to be able to put in similar blocks here so that we can arrange them and folks can find them, maybe collapse them, that type of thing. I feel like these are simple things that I've overcomplicated with Bootstrap.
Yes, but no.
Okay.
It just kind of depends. I'm just sort of trying to work out exactly. That's one of the difficult things about CSS, and the reason why a lot of people tend to go with Bootstrap is because there's no right answer for CSS.
Okay.
There's so many different ways that you can do things, and so often that's a little bit overwhelming. The same as we've seen at the conference here. So there's so many different sessions going on. It's a little bit overwhelming to try and choose which one to go to.
Sure.
So it's often easier to Bootstrap will go, here, this is how we build a card, and you don't have to worry about all of the different ways that you can do it.
Okay. So, let me see what I can do here for the. I don't see our sound tech. There you go. Now we could hear you there.
Sorry.
No, that was. I think you need to pull the microphone up so it's a little bit closer to your mouth.
Oh, there we go.
There, is that better? How's that, friends? Let's see. And yeah, you know what? I'm going to force this to mono, so that we're just in everybody's. There we go. There, that's better. All right. So cards are definitely a thing that folks have done here. It works well. And on the configuration page, where I want to be able to show, here's the different features that are available. Then I can actually even load those. If I have a definition of here's what the card looks like, when I start programmatically loading those user interfaces, because it's in some other file that I'm going to include when I render my HTML,
Yeah.
that would be easier for me to be able to just say, well, here's a class and place it appropriately. Okay. Where would you like to start? There's the outer layout that is just a travesty.
Probably the outer layout then,
Okay.
because we can see what that looks like. We've got a sidebar and then a main area.
Okay.
And you said you wanted the login button to go?
Yeah, I'd like the login to actually be something a little bit more prominent than up on the top like we see here, so that when we have, here's a little bit of intro information about what it is. I'll eventually get into some fonts and some nice graphics here in the background, but to have it, somewhere that's easy that says, hey, log in now and get started with the bot. I can position and I can put that stuff on the HTML for this, but then place it and start talking about layout is, I think, where I'd like your help.
Yeah, okay. So if I have a look at what we've got here.
Okay, so I'm going to... Oh, okay, you're looking in...
I'm just having a look in the dev tools to just kind of see what we've got inside the HTML. So I can see here we've got main app, and then the sidebar and main. Okay, so which file are we working in for the main layout here?
So I'm going to go back over to Visual Studio so our friends can watch. This is all working with a Blazor application. So the main layout lives inside of Pages Index, and that's the outer layout that has the HTML and the head. And at that point, it feels like an Angular application where we have this app directive, and it says render the application here. Put everything inside this app. But you're looking for the main window, those things.
Yeah.
those are under, I believe it's components, and then we have, there's me with the N. The app is the router, just like we have in a Razor application. The shared here has main layout, and this is where there's our sidebar, there's our div class main. So there you go. I can see you're following me into this file.
Yep.
And you can see Amy's little flag there where she is on her machine using live share to connect in and see this.
Yep.
So the sidebar, the top row that has hello, whoever's logged in, log out, log in, so that's shared and they have that login menu capability everywhere. Sidebars in applications like this, right? I mean, they turn into the hamburger menu that we've all seen.
Yeah.
For a while, I was calling it the cheeseburger menu, and people were insulting me, saying you're so American calling it a cheeseburger. Whatever.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody call it a cheeseburger.
Oh my gosh. Okay, maybe it was just me then. Fine. I see how this is. So, the left menu bar that's over here, the left navigation bar, is. I know a lot of folks say we shouldn't do that pull-out bar over there, but it feels like that's a good place to still put your menu.
Look, people say you shouldn't, but the other thing is that's where users expect it to be.
Okay.
So it's nice to do something different, but also you don't want to confuse people with where things actually are.
Right.
So people know to look for a hamburger menu, and they know something's going to pull out from the side. So dealing with those kind of expectations, it just depends on whether or not a hamburger menu makes the user experience harder or
Okay.
easier because they know where it's going.
Okay.
Probably the first thing I want to look at here though isn't CSS. It would be
The actual HTML?
the HTML.
Okay.
As I said, it's the building block, so that's the best place to start. And you said that sort of once it got to HTML5, it started to get a bit hard. And so the great thing is HTML5 actually gave us a lot of new elements that we could HTML elements that we could use,
Okay.
which it gives a better experience to anybody who's using an assistive technology or things like that. So it
Sure.
sets expectations of the kind of content
Okay.
to expect from this kind of thing. So I'm having a look here. We've got here div class sidebar. So what we could, again, same as CSS, there's a lot of different ways that we can do this.
Okay.
So, but for something like this, I would actually use an aside element.
Okay. So what's an aside element compared to my div that we had there?
So we're all aware of div soup.
Yes, div soup. That's a great way to describe it, and that's what I see here is divs everywhere.
So divs aren't bad, but it doesn't provide any information to the accessibility tree. Literally, all a div does is it gives a containing element and it applies the CSS property of display block to it.
So
That's
it's
all
literally
it does.
it's literally a box.
Yes, it
Okay.
just adds
A generic box.
Yeah. Whereas an aside element represents a portion of it. So I'm looking at the MDM web docs here.
Okay.
Really great resource for these kinds of things. Represents a portion of a document whose content is only indirectly related to the document's main content.
Oh.
Asides are frequently presented as sidebars or call-out boxes.
Perfect. That makes perfect sense for what we're trying to do.
Yeah. So for this kind of thing, you could probably use a sidebar here.
Okay. Okay.
Again, an aside element doesn't really apply anything to the content, so it doesn't have heaps of padding and margins and things like that. It's just letting assistive technologies know the kind of content to expect from it. And it's also useful, so if you're familiar with when you save an article for later, when you save it to Pocket or something like that, and
For
then
sure.
definitely read it later. Definitely don't.
Yeah,
have
definitely read it
Yeah,
later.
I've read all of the things in my Pocket backlog.
Because
60% of the time, it works every time.
And maybe not even that 60%, right?
Yeah. So
Oh my.
and
Yes. Yeah.
and a side element will often let something like Pocket know that it's not really part of the main article, things
Okay.
like that.
So they know, the Pocket then knows to ignore this when they render the content for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then if we have a look, we also have div class main, and this is another really great HTML element, which is the main element. So we can use that one instead.
Okay. Because and just like who is this here? Somebody just told us Webface CA says divs are non-semantic. So by using
Yes.
slightly more descriptive, we get similar functionality, but it describes better to other resources.
Yeah, so we're looking at reader mode, stuff like Pocket, assistive technologies like screen readers,
Okay.
and things like that. This is so using semantic HTML is super important. It's actually the best thing you can do for accessibility and usability is using semantic HTML, and that's why it's really important to look at using elements like this. It will be interesting to see. I'd say in the future using semantic HTML will also be super important as we start to do more stuff with voice.
Yes. That okay. Now you've got me thinking forward, and I want folks to be able to interact with using their voice. Maybe it's not this application. Maybe it's another application. Now I'm thinking I need to start learning more of the new tags that we have available to us. Okay.
Yeah. And so as I said, so these ones aren't really, these are semantic elements, so they're providing information to accessibility trees and things like that, but it's not adding any CSS. There are a few more new fields that also give us a lot of really great extra functionality as well, so it's worth having a look at them next time.
Okay.
For example, there's elements like a data list, which
Oh sure, the DL tag. We've had that for a while, right?
Maybe
Or
it's a different.
Are you thinking of?
There's the DL tag. I thought it was a data list.
Okay. Simon Jeering also comments, by using more semantic tags like this, it makes your code easier to read for the next developer who picks it up.
Yes.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah. Yes. Data list, which is a specific. The tag is literally data list.
Oh, okay.
not
DL is
DL.
definition list. Okay.
Yes. So the DL is a type of list similar to an ordered list and an unordered list. A data list is a form field. So similar to how you have a select field with options inside of it.
Sure.
But then, when you've got 200 options, it's a pain for people to scroll through it.
For
but
sure.
you don't want them to just have a free text field. So often people use a library for autofill. Data
Okay.
list allows you to define options, and people can type in and it will autofill. It's literally
The browser supports it now.
It's literally so most of the browsers do. IE 10 and onward supports that. Android WebView doesn't, unfortunately. But that's the browser support is pretty good
But
for that one.
I like to look at something like this and think, thank you, Spectre and Meltdown, because a couple summers ago you forced everybody to upgrade from IE10.
Yeah. Well,
Right?
as we saw this week, when the new Edge comes out, it won't even matter anymore.
That's
'cause
right.
You can just use Edge, and IE10 stuff will work there too.
For sure. And Boom Boom has an image for us. Is this CSS complicated? Well, yes, actually. What? But actually, no. And her hair's covering it. Oh, I see this. Thank you, Boom Boom. Gosh.
I'm concerned about where that picture came from.
Yeah. It was an imager. So.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so if we have a look at using an aside and a main element,
Okay.
we can have a look at that there. So if I have a look here then, so inside of the main element, so I'm assuming this is our login section at the top.
Right. That was the top nav bar.
Um,
Right, with that top row class, which.
and then we've got the content inside of it there. Just trying to think. I'm going to leave this one for now.
And I'm going to click to follow you.
But I might just add a class of login so that we can actually refer to it without using bootstrap classes.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And then here for the content, I'm actually going to apply the class of article.
Okay.
Now, article is this is a bit of a trick. So article is usually used to dictate this is the main content of the page. So like if a blog post, the content of the blog post would all appear inside of the article. That's what something like Pocket would know the article is.
Okay. Thank you for the follow.
Yeah.
Steve will pop up every now and again.
No worries. Yeah. So we can look at using something like that there.
And the article can live on its own without the rest of the page content, says Webface.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So now is this updating the HTML?
What
It's
we need to
not.
restart.
Yeah.
And so I will restart the application so we can get the new layout in there. That's the only catch with using Blazor like this is when you change HTML and CSS, you need HTML in these rendered pages, you need to restart the application. Boomy LOL says we have a large client who is a hospital, and they've been trying to convince them to stop using Internet Explorer. The hospital keeps saying they have a lot of SharePoint-related apps that only work in IE. Is that really the case? Well, Edge is going to embed that IE rendering.
Yeah, so that's what we heard in the keynote on Monday, was that IE apps will be able to work in Edge, and they were guaranteeing it as well.
Yeah.
If an IE app doesn't work in Edge, they will fix it for free. So I need to go back and tell all of our local businesses they need to sort that out.
But if it's a SharePoint-related app, I would think that the Edge folks have already been working with SharePoint, the SharePoint teams, to look at older versions to make sure that that works. I hope.
I would assume so, yes, but I know SharePoint does get tricky.
Okay.
I have worked with it briefly and did not enjoy that experience. So I definitely wouldn't guarantee that for now.
Okay. Yeah, I find that a lot of web first folks or developer first folks, when they work with SharePoint, they get frustrated. That I want a little bit more freedom. I want a little bit more access to be able to change things up.
Yeah. So I've not done much development with SharePoint, mainly just from a user perspective. Because as soon as I started looking from a developer's perspective, you
feel constrained. It's great for folks who, for the non-developer folks who want to just put some lists together, put a form together.
Yeah.
And then there's those times that developers do need to get involved with SharePoint to add search functionality, add some business logic. But the 90% of the stuff you really don't need developers for. It's nice like that, but for developers, we'd rather work somewhere else.
Yeah, it does get a bit difficult. But yeah, I would definitely recommend checking out the new Edge dev and seeing if that is going to solve the problem, and then definitely sort of getting in touch if it's not working, because I think that's really the fact that they're guaranteeing it is really great. Maybe we can actually get rid of IE support sooner than we'd hoped.
It would be so good. It would be so good.
Yeah, I saw a tweet with, I think as of some point in October, it was only 5 years until Microsoft were dropping support for IE 11.
Only 5 years. Oh my gosh.
We're counting down.
Are you kidding? You know what? I have an idea. Twitch polling was just introduced and is now available. Let's run a quick poll and see if folks are supporting applications that support IE.
I think it'd be really interesting to know as well whether or not they're supporting IE 11, IE 10, or something even older.
Oh my
than
gosh!
That, because there are some people out there who are having to support something even older.
For sure. So let's ask. Are you supporting Internet Explorer? Yes, IE 11. Yes, IE 10, and later. Yes, IE 9 and earlier. No. And we'll leave that open for 3 minutes. Let's take a look. And friends out there, you'll see the poll just popped up here on Twitch. If you can click through, let us know if you're building an application and you're supporting Internet Explorer. Click through and let us know. We'd be curious to hear your feedback, and maybe we can even share some of that information with the team. So we changed up some of those tags, and now the sidebar kind of disappeared.
Yeah. So I'm just having a look here.
What'd you do?
Well, we changed the tag. That's what we did.
Yep. So I'm just having a look here, and it seems I would say it's there, but the font color is white because it used to have. Yeah,
Because
there
it
we
had
go.
the
Because it
purple
had a
background.
but the purple background's gone because we changed the tag. So if I have a look, yeah, so all of the content's still there. We just can't see it.
Okay.
So if I added a color to the so our CSS for this then
So now what you can't say is Amy is testing some things out natively right here in the browser here. Goran, thanks so much for the resub. Appreciate that. We'll make another donation to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. So working things out in the browser feels like a great way to test things, and I love doing that with the CSS.
Yeah.
Are there specific things that you're looking for as you're going through the developer tools to tinker with what's happening there?
Well, I have a look to checking that the HTML's there. The aside element is definitely still being rendered. I can, if I hover over it in the inspector, I can see where it's sitting on the page. And so then it's often a case of, so something I'll do is I'll often add a background color to it and see if that's appearing where I know it should be. And just sort of having a look at the content there.
So you went and grabbed that item, and it's listed as a flex item here I'm using Firefox.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm using Firefox as well. For front-end development, Firefox dev tools have been spectacular. They've come so far, even in the last few months alone, and particularly so when you're using things like Flexbox and when we get to the grid part, Firefox's grid inspector is spectacular.
Okay.
So if you're not using Firefox already, I recommend checking it out for grid.
I didn't want to jump right into the Chrome usage, right? I felt like using Chrome exclusively on stream was something that kind of betrayed a more open web. And I wanted to use Firefox because even though I work for folks that want me to use Edge, I wanted to make sure that I was a little bit in between and I could bounce back and forth and show a little bit of everything. And I've really tended to favor Firefox. And I agree with you. The tools in Firefox have really come a long way.
Yeah, even like they're always announcing new things. So that's really great to hear. I initially switched about 12 months ago now. I thought, I'll try it out for a month, see how it goes, and I haven't gone back. The developer experiences has been amazing, and it does feel really good to support as well because they do a lot of really amazing stuff for developers.
For sure.
Yeah.
So there's the poll finished. 53% of the folks say, nope, not supporting Internet Explorer right now. We've got 26% saying, yep, they're supporting IE 11. 16% are supporting IE 10 and later. And 5% are supporting less than IE 9 and earlier. Ouch.
I feel
oh my
really
goodness.
sorry for that one person.
Yeah. Thanks so much for chiming in there, chat room. Appreciate your feedback.
Okay, so now if we start to have a look at the CSS, we can sort of bring we can bring the sidebar back for everybody. So where can I find the CSS for
so
this?
the CSS, I shall. If we now this is not an internet. this is an ASP.NET Core thing. There's a www root file folder here, and inside there is where we put all of our static content.
Yeah.
So that's where you'll see site CSS, the Bootstrap reference, and we can start working from there.
Yeah, so I'm going to have a look in site CSS because we'll leave the Bootstrap alone until we can get rid of it altogether.
Okay.
Okay, so we can see here where there's some styles for the sidebar. There's not really... I think there's something wrong with using Bootstrap,
Okay.
but that's because I'm a purist. I tried to use Bootstrap a while ago, and I did not like it. I found it really difficult. For me, it is much easier for me to just do it in CSS.
Okay.
However, I understand that a lot of people don't see it that way.
Okay. I mean, as a jumping off point for somebody who isn't an expert,
Yeah.
it feels like, okay, you've got something that doesn't look like a disaster,
Yeah.
right? But I do agree with you. There certainly are points where if you've got the expertise in whatever technology, you want to do it yourself. You're going to have that full control to really deliver what you want instead of trying to fit your needs into somebody else's framework.
Yeah. Yeah, so it really depends. Look, if you're mocking something up and if you don't have the support for Grid, maybe have a look at something like Bootstrap. But if you're building something for the ground up, and it's particularly if you're not having to support those IE browsers, then I do definitely recommend having a look at Grid as a viable option and going from there.
Cool.
Okay, so if we have a look, because our side element no longer has the class of sidebar, that's why it's not getting the styles anymore.
Yep, that background image.
And so we can see where all of that code is there as well. So what I can actually do is I can change it to a side.
Okay.
Now.
And you've just rerouted those still into that same sidebar.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for the follow.
And there we go. We can so if we have a look at the application, we can see that sidebar now has the gradient back again.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah. So.
But now it's more semantic, and it now takes advantage of it. Now those other browsers and technologies will see it. Okay.
Yeah. So if I go through and replace the rest of the sidebar styles that we've got here.
Sure. And refresh the browser. And we have to do a hard refresh because the CSS is living outside. So there we go. Okay, so the top half has the appropriate background color, and we still have the gradient for the lower half.
Yeah, so we're starting to get those styles back again. Now, again, I have just used the HTML element. For a large application, I would recommend using a class as well, and probably referring to it as the class because you may be using multiple aside elements.
Sure.
But
well, thinking about this application, right, and where it's going to end up going, I don't want to be too complicated in how I do my layout. Because the widgets and how we're going to configure the various features of the bot, they're clearly not asides. They're clearly going to be articles or something in the middle. So I think you're okay. I think we're clear with using aside and not needing to use a class.
Yeah.
Our friend Stelzy in the chat room says, a site not looking like a complete disaster for many coders is a strong plus. I can't disagree.
Yeah. So what I'm going to go through and have a look at now is where we've got Flexbox, which is in our app, and I'm going to switch that over to use CSS Grid instead.
Okay. Now, what's the difference between Flexbox and CSS Grid for somebody who's still using tables for layout like me?
So CSS Grid has a lot more control in multiple directions. It's specifically designed for layouts. Flexbox is really great for flowing content, so a nav bar with multiple things going along, or if you don't need control in both directions.
Okay.
But for an overall layout where you do want control across and down the page, that's where Grid's really useful.
Okay. So when I get to thinking about the configuration, and I'll have a block of configuration for this feature and that feature, Grid makes sense there. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Grid also allows you to control the layout more from the parent perspective, so on our app element, whereas Flexbox, the layout is more dictated by the child elements inside of it as well.
Okay.
There are a few other things depending on what you're wanting to be able to do. There's not really a straight answer for either of them. It's a case of kind of knowing the positives and negatives about both of them and choosing which one suits your requirements.
Cool. All right.
The other thing that's useful is Flexbox has a lot better browser support, so often that is useful for if you don't have the support for Grid, or as a fallback for CSS Grid as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Boomy LOL asks, can we just use CSS Grid for everything?
Technically, yes. But just because you can use something doesn't mean that you should.
Okay.
So I still use both CSS Grid and Flexbox, because if I'm creating a nav bar, I'm gonna go Flexbox. If I'm trying to vertically center something, I'm going with Flexbox.
Okay.
But if I'm doing an overall layout, then I will use Grid for that if I can.
So that you can force it to the appropriate locations.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. Okay, here. So I set display grid
Okay.
on our element. I then want to define what our grid looks like.
Okay.
So I'm going to use a property called grid template columns. And so here we have a fairly simple grid. We have two sections,
The
our
left
sidebar
panel.
and our main element.
Right.
So we want to have our sidebar, and just trying to work out the best way to define this. Okay, so if we have 100 pixels for a sidebar and 500 pixels for our main section.
For the rest. Is there any way to just to specify that the rest is just the leftovers,
I'm
whatever
getting
else?
to that.
Oh, sorry. I'm getting ahead of things.
Yeah.
That's because
Danger's my middle name.
it is. Okay, so I'll refresh. Okay, so now I've got a fixed, it looks like it's 500 pixels wide over here.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a background color to this here. And if you refresh again, so that way we can just see where that app is sitting.
There we go. Okay. So goldenrod, the area to the right there, is that second grid cell.
Yeah. What we're going to then do, though, is we're going to click on that app in Inspector. And if we have a look in the sidebar here, in the sidebar there should be a layout tab.
In the sidebar.
Sorry, in the this sidebar here. So
Oh,
if you click
yeah,
on the layout
yeah.
tab, and then check the box next to where it says app.
Oh, look at that. Okay.
So this is Firefox's grid inspector.
Oh, very
and
nice.
This allows us to kind of see the grid that we've defined here, so we can see the two different areas there, and you can also see the lines of our different sections in the grid.
Right, I can see the left column clearly there, and over here. Can I change that color? So maybe because we're using a little purple here, maybe I want to make it green so it stands out a little against that. Yeah, I can definitely see. Right, it might be a little bit harder for you folks to see out there because I am scaling down the stream here today.
Yeah, but what you can actually do, so if you scroll down inside of that sidebar there as well, you can hover over those sections and you can see
Oh,
a bit
wow.
further.
Okay, that is really cool to be able to see. Let me bring that up just a little bit further so you can see that chat room.
Yep. What you can also do is you can see there's a checkbox there as well to extend lines indefinitely.
So even when I scroll...
And so that will just sort of show you where that grid is then lining up with the rest of the application but this is for an overall, so we're not using that as much.
Oh my gosh. I'm thinking about all the times that I tried to use a div-focused layout, and I would do floats and clears and those types of things, and I would struggle with, why is it over here? Why is it over there?
Yep.
My gosh.
And so what
Simple
we've
tooling
written
made
two
it so
lines.
easy. Yeah.
2 lines. So, but as we said, we want the main content to just take up the rest of it.
Sure. Yeah. Fill the page.
So we're going to use a new unit which we can use in Grid, which is the FR unit. So I've set
Okay.
this to be 1 FR. The FR unit is a bit difficult to explain. It's something that is easier to see visually. And what it kind of does is it takes away any existing content that we've defined.
Okay.
So we've got our full page width, and then it takes away the 100 pixels from our sidebar, and then it takes up whatever space is left over.
Okay. Okay.
If I defined a second 1FR column,
Let me go so we can see that. Okay. So now,
after
would
that
that be 100 pixels, and then I said the end then. Fill the remaining space, but split it. Yeah, there we go.
Yep, and so you can have a look in our grid there as well. Now, if I change this code to be 100 pixels, 1FR, and then 2FR,
And I'll refresh. Okay.
you can see that 2FR column is now twice as big as the 1FR column. So it
Okay.
assigns it. So this is where we often use percentages, but we don't have to do math anymore. The browser does the math for us.
I'm thinking about the times that I've tried to use the CSS calc to position and make sure things. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So this does all of it for us.
Okay.
One of the other things that's really useful as well is which we can look at later. So there's an option to add gaps between each of the elements in a grid.
Okay.
And it actually knows, it will then take away that gap from what it's working out as well. And it also knows, so if we've got 3 columns, we only have 2 gaps, and it knows that. So that's where this is really useful.
So let me show the code that you just. All right. So you just removed the last column because we just want it to fill the rest of the way.
Yep.
And if we want to put that margin on the left side of that second column, right, so that we get a little bit of space there. So it's not just right because I see the W in welcome and the T and the I are right up against.
That would be something. So that would be something I would probably add padding to the main element instead,
Okay.
because we still want the. It's not that we want space between the main and the aside. We just want space around the content of the main. So I would probably look at padding for something like that. When I would look at adding gaps between it is, say, for an overall blog layout where I've got lots of blocks, I want to have gaps between them. So that's when I'd use CSS Grid Gap.
Okay. Boom Boom has a question here in the chat room. Can the FR unit work vertically?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm about to do that.
I like.
So if we have a look then at our rows, we only have one row.
Yeah. So. Okay. Now, is that fill the remainder of the screen?
No, that's use all of the space.
Okay.
And our app is only going to take up as much space as we need.
Okay.
But
okay.
to give more of an app experience, what we can actually do is we can set min height of 100 viewport heights. And so what that does is it says that at absolute minimum, the app element should take up the full height of the screen. So viewport height units, if you're familiar with them,
I'm
from
not.
viewport heights is a CSS unit from 0 to 100. The basically percentage of the
Of
screen
the height of
yeah.
the browser.
of the browser screen that we've got here.
Okay.
So that said, that should take up the full screen that we have here.
Cool.
What that's done though is it's just set that should be the minimum height as well. So if we have more content, it will continue to grow to expand for the content. But at minimum, it will take up that size.
Okay.
Yeah.
So while we're still growing, fill the whole thing. But as we add more here, it'll ignore that.
Yeah.
Because it'll fill and go past it. Or
That's
if we're looking at
useful
a mobile device too.
Yeah, and that's useful for if we've got, when you want to have the footer at the bottom, but if you don't have much content on the page, the footer stays at the top. This is a
Yeah.
really easy way for making sure that footer always stays at the bottom, even if you don't have much content.
Oh, okay. Oh, I definitely want to think about that. Something that we were kicking around as well was how do I put it? I want to put a footer at the bottom that says here's the current version that's deployed and running.
Yeah.
Right, so I can put a version number with something hanging there.
Yeah. Yeah. So there, we've got our application is coming up there.
Yeah, it's already looking a lot better. Brave Cobra 2 in the chat room says, knowing enough CSS to be dangerous, what's the trick to make it look beautiful? Some designers seem to understand something that Brave Cobra does not. There must be something that makes that difference but still doesn't see it. What's the secret?
So I want to add a disclaimer here is that I'm not a designer.
Okay.
And like, by the sounds of it, a lot on the stream today, I have no design chops. I can deal with layout, and if I have a design, I can make that in CSS, but I can't come up with that design myself. So I work with designers, and if they give me, I appreciate so much the skill of some of the designers that I've worked with. What they make is just spectacular and is something that I could never do.
But you can help them transform that initial
Yeah.
design into CSS, HTML.
Yeah, so I can turn that design into code, but I can't come up with that design
No.
myself.
Yeah, that's an artistic thing.
Yeah.
So, Zebcode, welcome. Best of luck to you on your upcoming user group meeting there. Ugly is never going to be beautiful. CSS code ends up on the other side of the spectrum. The trick to beautiful designs is to hire a designer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hire somebody who's really good at it. That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, so I've recently had the chance to work on a project where they had designs made up, and they were gorgeous designs. Nothing fancy, but just really nice, clean designs. And it was so nice to be able to create that in CSS because, yeah, I know what I want something to look like, but I can never never quite get it to work the way it should. But if I have a design, I can make that happen. But I can't come up with that myself.
That initial thought of this looks really cool. This meets my needs. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really cool.
And I'm terrible with colors. Oh my gosh, I didn't choose the colors for this. These are the defaults that come with it. But when I start thinking about what colors do I want to make things go together, I mean, look, the layout on the app right now, on the stream right now, is 2 purple bars. I mean, come on. Anyways, and I'm improving that. I hired a designer.
Yeah, I just got my rebranding done, and just what she did, it was just like, it was amazing. It was exactly what I wanted. So that's really cool. But then once you've got the colors done, though, that's when you have to choose the fonts.
Oh my gosh, and fonts are a whole nother discussion, aren't they?
Yeah.
There's a whole thing going on there. Now, I don't have turned on right now some of the redemptions that we do here on channel, but I want to call out to you. You're going to cringe when I tell you this, okay? So you see the little gear here down at the bottom of the screen, and you friends out there in the chat room, you see it. That little orange gear is a feature on Twitch called channel points. So you get to name your channel points specific to your channel, and folks can redeem those as they earn them for watching and participating. They can redeem them, and you can have it enable different things on channel. So some of the things that they can do with those on this channel are force me to use Comic Sans in my editor for 20 minutes. See that? You saw that, chat room. How about this? They can highlight their messages like that, like Copperbeardy just did. They can force me to use Papyrus in my editor. Force me to go to light mode for a bit, right? Okay, see? But there's also some other things they can highlight their messages. They can also do some other fun, engaging things with us here on the channel. So the con crud is starting to settle in with all of us. I've been feeling it since last night. I'm like, oh.
I had it before I even came. I actually had a conference trip last month and got sick after that, and so haven't sort of fully
still recovering
back. Yeah.
Thank you for the follow. So there's all kinds of stuff that we can do there. Valentine is asking, so how do you make the footer stay at the bottom if there isn't enough content? Can we just put a simple copyright on the bottom there?
Yep.
So
if we add, this was where we were.
Oh, I'm on the wrong. Let me close this.
Still 2019, right?
Yep. Which file are you in?
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
looking- I
Main
lost it.
layout.
Ah, there you are. Okay, so you
So we
just
can see I've added a footer element.
right now footer element. I kind of right. I figured that one out because I know we had a header, and okay, header is, but footer got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So I've just added a footer element here, and so now we'll have to restart.
So I'll restart the application. Not browser. This one. There's two of these arrows in a circle buttons, and I always get them confused. One of them is browser link, which is a lot like browser sync that the Node folks use, but it's wired up to Visual Studio. And the other one is restart the application. So this will restart, and it'll send a link over to Amy here, and it'll open on her browser as well.
Yeah, I think I've gotten used to. I often use browser sync, so I've gotten used to not having hot module reload and things like that.
Yes.
So I don't have to.
They've got to get that running now with the Blazor tools. We're early in the process, but it'd be so good if that was still in there.
Yeah. So if we have a look at our app again, so we can see there's now a footer.
It's all the way down on the bottom in that corner, way over there.
Yeah. So if we have a look, if we go back to the grid inspector again and have a look at our grid.
All right, so let me open
Because
that up.
so another thing that's really useful with grid is that there are implicit and explicit areas.
Okay.
So we've explicitly defined that it should have 2 columns, and we've defined 1 row.
Sure.
But it worked out that, well, hang on, that's only 2 sections of the grid, and we have 3 elements. So it's then started to create new rows underneath to fit extra content. So that's really cool. And so if we have a look and hover over our grid again, you can see that's because our footer has been pushed into our new row at the bottom there, but it's been kept in that first column, which is only 100 pixels wide.
I know how to do this. In tables, this is a row span. There's got to be a row span with CSS Grid.
There is a row span.
All right.
So this is where so we can define how we want it to span and where we want to go to. And so if we have a look in Grid Inspector as well, so where we click to extend lines indefinitely,
Right.
there's another option which says to display line numbers.
Okay.
So if we click that, if people are able to read it, so Grid numbers each of the lines.
Oh my gosh.
So we can see on each of the lines, we can see it's numbered 1, 2, 3, all the way across.
Okay, I got it.
So if we go back to our code for a second.
Right, and back in the CSS file.
Yeah, we're going to set grid. Actually, no, we're not going to do that here because I want to define this on the footer. And we've got people making faces at the window here at Ignite.
What? I don't even recognize who those folks are.
Other Aussies. I think the further away we get from Australia, the stronger the magnetic pull becomes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to define on our footer, if we can see that here, we're going to define grid column start. So it says we want it to start at line 1.
Okay.
And we want it to go all the way across the bottom. So we could set it to go to line 3, which is the end. But then if we add an extra column in, line 3 won't be the end. It'll only span the first 2 columns.
Okay.
This is where it's useful because grid doesn't just number them from 1 to 3, it also numbers them backwards. So if we're able to see here, the numbers actually go backwards. So this is 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
But then you can see at the bottom, there's also -1, -2, -3 going backwards.
Right.
So what we can do there is if we go back to the code,
Okay.
I can set grid column end to -1. And what that says is I want it to end at the very end. And that's really useful because no matter how big our grid is, whether it's 1 column wide or 100 columns wide, -1 will always be the very end
Always
of
go
it.
to the last one.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh my gosh. That makes perfect sense to me now. And I'll refresh after you saved.
Yep, I've
So it starts
saved.
from column 1 and goes all the way to the end, and you can see if I turn off the display line numbers, it's busting out of the first column there.
Yeah. So that's coming, and particular. So I'll add a background color to this as well. I normally use Rebecca Purple, but we've already got our aside.
Let's just use like a gray. Just
It's a bit boring.
it is, but it's a footer. It's meant to kind of disappear, right?
I'm not using grey. I'm going to use green, yellow.
All right. I always use the color Papaya Whip when I want to kind of make something not quite white, but kind of be my signature that, oh yeah, this thing is over here. So let me turn off the line number so we can see that. Okay. And we can do a text-align center to put that in the middle type thing. Cool.
Yeah. So we can see we've got our footer there. Now what we would actually do with this, because again, so our footer is being implicitly assigned a spot in the grid. What we do actually want to do is we want to define it a specific row in our layout. So if we go back to the code and where we've defined grid template rows, I don't want to just have one row of one FR. I want to have one FR, and then, no, I'm going to set it a height. I'm going to set it a height of 50 pixels.
So just like we did with the columns going across, 100 pixels for the first column,
Yeah.
fill the remaining space, right? I'm guessing, right, that seems like a good way for me to remember what FR is, but one, fill the remaining space vertically and 50 pixels at the bottom.
So I remember it as like a fractional unit.
Okay.
I have a feeling it's actually called something else. I know people are referring to it as a fractional unit.
Okay.
Or the FR unit.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we've refreshed our application, our
So now
footer
it's a
now
little
has
bit
a bit of a
bigger.
height.
And if I resize it, it sticks to the bottom because it's
Yep.
that fixed 50 pixels high.
And if we have a lot more content that's in there as well, it will still stay at the bottom even though our screen may get bigger.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So now, but what we were wanting to center it.
Yes.
And so this is something that everyone knows is an issue in CSS, is trying to vertically center content.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
It's a
This
nightmare.
is where I always felt tables shine. I can do v-align, align, and I'm done as attributes. And when I try to do it with CSS elements, it's, well, I need to position it, and I'm going to set padding, but I'm going to do vertical align and padding, and it's weird.
So this is when I go to Flexbox.
Okay.
I have a lot of content which is literally just, sometimes it'll just be like aligning an icon in a box. But I'll just set it to Flexbox because I can easily center it.
Okay. Now, before you start writing that, Boomy has a question here that
Yep.
kind of feeds into a little bit of what you're doing. How come it's okay to put all the CSS in one CSS file, but if a C# class has more than 10,000 lines, it's terrible? Why are we discriminating against long C# files that are going to be compiled and turned into machine code versus CSS, which we're serving that?
Well, I wouldn't actually keep all of my CSS in one file.
Okay.
And depending on whether or not it compiles to one file, I usually use, so I will usually use SAS, which is a CSS preprocessor.
Okay.
So it allows me to really easily have things in multiple files. It joins them all together.
Okay.
The other thing it allows me to do is it allows me to nest things inside of one another. So when we can see here in our code where we've got our aside, and then we've got to define aside top row again. If I'm using SAS, I can, if we're able to see on the screen there, I think it's just further down on the page.
Further down? Oh, yeah, there you are.
Yeah, so I'm actually able to nest things inside, and when that compiles, that would compile out to aside top row.
Right.
So that makes it much easier for me to write the CSS. It does, however, have the issue of a lot of people kind of go a little bit crazy with nesting when you're not having to write the whole thing out.
Yeah.
So I actually have multiple files. Depending on the project, it may compile to one file, but sometimes it'll stay. So usually if I'm using, so for example, if I'm doing more of a React site, it usually keeps them separate and it just renders the ones that it needs for that page.
Okay. But as a whole, when you are building that single page application, that SPA, to be able to have all of that markup in one or two CSS files that you deliver means that it's cached on the client side, and we don't need to go and retrieve all these things. Caching's our friend with that.
Yeah. It really depends. Like, it does come down to performance, that if you're loading a bunch of CSS that you don't need, again, this is one of the things where Bootstrap is more of an issue, because you're loading a bunch of CSS that you may not actually be needing.
Sure.
I've never been concerned, because my CSS files are still, even if it's all in one file, I don't have a lot of CSS. I try and keep it fairly compact.
Okay.
So even if I am loading CSS I may not need on a particular page, I'm less concerned. It does have a performance impact, but when I'm looking at optimizing performance, optimizing the CSS file that much so that I'm only serving what I need is not going to have an impact. The 6 GB image that my client has uploaded,
There
that
you go.
one,
Yeah.
that can probably
My
be the
goodness.
one that's impacting the performance. So I have, it is on the list of things to optimize performance, but it's right down
It's
there.
further down. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all about that perceived performance of the website, and there's so many other things before those CSS lines.
Yeah.
Two Wolf asks, does Razor use a framework, or can you use anyone you like? You can use anyone you like, actually. Razor is just generating HTML for you. Any particular reason that Firefox dev tools are being used? We like Firefox.
So Firefox DevTools, as we've
And you were
been
pointing out
looking
the,
at with the Grid Inspector,
Yeah.
I do believe Chrome now has a Grid Inspector.
Okay.
But Firefox was the original one that had it, and I kind of stuck. It also has a lot of other useful tools. So if you have a look there, you can see there's also a fonts tab.
Oh, yes, yes.
So where
Let
you've
me-
selected the layout tab, there's also a fonts tab there as well. So that's really useful for just working out, when you're trying to load a custom font and you don't really know if it's being used, that will tell you the font that's being used. And at the bottom, if you scroll down a bit, it'll also list all of the fonts that are being used on the page.
Ah, okay, okay.
It's really useful. Next to the fonts tab as well is an animations tab. And when you're dealing with CSS animations, this
Oh my
is
gosh.
really great. So
Yeah,
they've got
yeah.
a lot of really great visual tools. There are a few more custom things for if you're doing stuff like clip paths and things like that. They're also bringing out, I'm not too sure if it's in the current Firefox or if it's coming out soon. They're also bringing out some really great accessibility tools as well.
Okay, okay. I had no idea about the animations. Well, there is an accessibility bit here.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
didn't know about the animations, and we did a lot of work with animations a few days ago. And the positioning of things. Particularly, we were animating a little train going across the screen, and I was struggling with the positioning and the management of where this is located. I feel like I spent all this time doing the X transpose, right, to get it to X transform to get it move across the screen from right to left, and gosh, I could have been doing it with Flex here, and it'd been a lot easier to do that and get some information from this animations panel.
Yeah, so it's much easier to. So I've done a bit of work with animations recently, and it's just made things much easier to visualize it there.
Oh, I bet.
As you've seen, it does also have an accessibility tab, which is really great for just kind of, so that will have a look at the accessibility tree and whether or not there's ways you can improve your HTML. But what they're actually coming out with, which I'll have a look if we can see that now. So I'm not too sure. So it was a tweet. Yep, no, it's already there. So if we have a look at some of the text that's on our page.
Sure. Okay, so if I go up to here, maybe the header.
Yep. Okay, and if you just pull that out a bit and find where the color is being set.
So if I look at computed, there's color.
No, so if you have a look in, not under the computed one, the next one over, I think just where, I'm trying to think of what that one is called, the rules bar, which is the middle one you've got there.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. So if you find where the color is being defined,
There we go.
there, and click on the black circle there for the color. So you can have a look there. It's actually starting to highlight whether or not that's good enough contrast. So you can see there, It's got, they're looking at the contrast for large text because this is a header, it's large text, and they've had a look at the color contrast between it and the background. And we can see here this is, so the black on the yellow is passing AAA accessibility requirements for this contrast, for this text size.
And I mean, if we go down and we choose a red, and right if we say somewhere up in here, it triggers and says, oh, that's not.
Yeah.
You're not within. Very cool. Oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
That's a great way to make sure that, yes, for those folks who are colorblind and have other visual issues, that are able to see that.
Yeah, so this is really useful for looking at. It's not even people that are colorblind. You have opened up your phone when you're outside and there's a lot of glare.
Oh my gosh, yes.
If you don't have enough color contrast, then nobody can see what's going on.
And I feel like, I'm using, I forget which version of iOS, the dark mode, the keys on the keyboard in dark mode, in iPhone dark mode, aren't colored properly, and I can't see the keys.
Yeah, when I work outside, I've got to switch to light mode for everything because it's just too hard. Yeah, so that's why I use the Firefox DevTools, because they've just got a lot of these really great tools, and it's really hard to keep up with all of the updates that they're giving as well. So even I follow Firefox DevTools on Twitter, and they're constantly tweeting about new stuff that they're bringing out.
Very cool. Brave Cobra points out here, why are there scroll bars with the current code? Yeah, there's a little extra space over here. Is that because I have the extend lines indefinitely turned on?
So that's interesting because
well,
you have scroll bars. Oh wait, no, the scroll
well,
bars
they're
are gone.
gone.
I'm not sure.
They were there, you're right, but looked like a rogue grid column. Could have been. Don't know. And Electric Havoc points out, today I learned Chrome Color Picker Contrast. Chrome has it also.
Yeah, Chrome does have it as well.
Okay.
So there is a fair bit of competition between the dev tools.
Good.
But
Push. Let's make better dev tools.
yeah, which is really great to see. I just don't have time to continue to switch between browsers, so that was really useful. It is entirely up to different to what you like. I also like that Firefox does look at privacy first.
Oh my gosh,
and
yes.
it's really interesting just looking at all of the trackers that are being blocked as well. I do still use Chrome occasionally. So I try to keep different browsers for different sections of work. For my main dev work, I use Firefox. My personal stuff, I use Brave. And for some contracting work, I use Chrome. It allows me to kind of keep things really easily separate by using different browsers.
Very cool. Yes, absolutely. I agree, Webface. Love the contrast tip. Points to you, Amy, on that. Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Edge Dev also has the 3D DOM viewer. Yeah, that is a kind of fun viewer, but I don't feel like that has a real purpose. That isn't something I'm going to look at and go, oh, look at that. It's a tower. Whatever.
Yeah, I am really interested to see what the new Edge comes out with for their dev tools, because they are based on Chromium, so they're getting a lot of the stuff that Chrome has, but they've also brought out a lot of really great accessibility updates as well, because Microsoft has put that at the forefront.
Made it a priority,
yeah.
Absolutely. Now, Electric Havoc suggested place items center. What does that do?
Where are we doing?
This right here. Try using place items center. Is that for the copyright you're suggesting, Electric Havoc?
I'm not sure I've used place items before. So this is one of the things where, here we go. Now I've learned something new. Yeah, this is one of the things where there's constant changes to CSS, and so it's hard to keep up to. I'm gonna do it the way I would. Well, I'm gonna do it the way I would normally to show people, and then because that looks like that's a shorthand, so we can try that out.
Okay.
Well, do your best.
We will.
Okay. Although it does look like. Yeah, so what we then have, so if you're familiar with Flexbox, we had our align items and justify items properties. The one thing, if you're familiar with Flexbox, so justify was the main axis, which was usually the x-axis, and align was usually the y-axis. But if you changed it to work in a column, it did switch. Grid, it's always the same. Justify is horizontal and align is vertical.
Okay.
So that defines how we want things to stay within our grid. So at the moment they're set to stretch, and so you can see even though we haven't set height and width to our elements, they're taking up the full sections they have available there.
Right, because of that, right, that one FR that we've told to fill the other. Okay.
Yeah, but even though, so an element doesn't have to take up the full size of the grid space, but by default it is. So if I change, now we also have to justify items and justify content. They are different, but I could not for the life of me tell you what the difference is. I believe the technical way to work out the difference is to switch between the two of them until it does what you want it to do. And then it's also kind of like a USB, is it, that takes 3 goes to do it.
Yes, you got to put it in one way, it doesn't work that way. Turn it over, it still doesn't work. Put it back, oh, it works the third time.
We had that way getting our bus getting out of the hotel the other day. It took 3 goes to get out of the hotel car park, and there were only 2 gates.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so by
That's why I like USB-C. It's just, it works one direction every time.
Yeah. So by default, things are set to justify stretch, which says horizontally it's going to take up the full space it's got. But I can set that, and this is where it gets into practice for when I come traveling in the US, because I have to spell center wrong.
Oh, you wound me. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, wait a sec. All right, it's centered, but it's only as wide as the words.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
only as wide as it needs to be. So there's various different options for this. They're similar to what we have in Flexbox, but kind of different. So a lot of the Flexbox ones were prefixed with flex, whereas now they've got rid of those prefixes. So for example, if you wanted to stay at the end, you would say flex end. Now it's just
Okay.
end. I believe they're actually looking at rolling it out so that will come into practice with Flexbox as well. So that for Flexbox you can just say end. So that way the terms will be interchangeable between Flexbox and Grid for where there's crossover.
Okay.
So I've just changed the code to justify items end.
Okay, so now it's on the far right.
Now everything's sitting on the far right. But and then we can also have a look. So I can do the same with align items, which will change it in the vertical axis. So I can change align items end.
And that'll put it at the bottom. Okay.
Yep. And so you can see our sidebars now pushed down to the bottom as
Oh,
well.
yeah. Everything's at the bottom.
Yep. So what
I was only looking at the copyright.
Yep. Because this is done for everything in the grid, which isn't really what we want.
No.
But what they were talking about before with the place items, which I've now learnt about, is actually a shorthand. So it looks like I can go place items and change that there.
And it puts everything in the
And
bottom.
that will put everything in the end. So there we go, something useful that I've learned today. But we don't want to change this for all of it. We liked our sidebar to take up the full space. We liked our content to take up the full space. What we're just wanting to do is to change where the content's sitting in the footer.
Yeah, just the one element.
Yep.
The one cell of the grid.
So that's where instead we're just going to change this on the footer. And we have similar, which is align self. So for this, we're going to say align self center, and then justify content center.
And everything else goes back, and there it is. Okay, cool. Now, it's the cell is, well, I'm confused. I can see the lines of the cell there in purple, but it's, right, the copyright has its background go the full way across.
Yes. So that will be because by default, footer has display block applied to it as an element. So
Okay.
because it's going to take up the full width of it anyway, it's not actually going to change size. What we want to do if we want to set, if we go back to the code, I actually want to assign text align. So we want it to say that any text inside this should be centered.
There it is in the center. Now, but what if we want the yellow border there, right? It's not, the yellow background clearly isn't filling the entire cell there vertically.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
So what I would probably do with that then is we want to keep it to align self stretch. So we want it to stretch vertically. So I'm going to take away, so if we have a look at the code again, I'm going to take away the align self center. And I'm going to see if this works. What I would do then is apply display flex. So this should, again, I'm coding as I would at home, just trying things and seeing if it works.
Sure.
And that has, so if we have a look back at the code here, so that's made it take up the full width.
Okay.
But it's not really doing what we wanted it to do. Maybe it was align items.
So you added line items and it put it now vertically in the center.
Yeah.
So then would we use the justify like we were saying?
Now we would use justify. So I think this one might be justify content. It's a little bit confusing in Flexbox because we have justify and align, but one has items and content, and I think one just has items. So when we're using,
There we go.
there we go.
Terrific.
I totally knew what I was doing.
Totally knew exactly what was happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is when I'm using things, I will often switch between them. But this is where, so CSS tricks, if you're not familiar with it, css-tricks.com.
Let me drop a link in the chat room here. There we go.
They have a really great guide to Flexbox, and it allows you to visually see what the different properties are and the different options we have. So that's really great. So if you search for CSS Tricks Guide to Flexbox, it will give you that. I actually found out recently, so this is actually the most traffic page on CSS Tricks. Not the
Is
home
the guide
page.
to Flexbox.
The guide to Flexbox is the most traffic page on their entire website.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a really cool one. They also have a really great guide to Grid as well. So again, if you search CSS Tricks, CSS Grid guide, they will give you a complete guide to Grid. So that's really great ones to look at when you're learning, or when I still look at these every day. When I wrote my CSS Grid talk, I'm pretty sure I kind of mess with their stats for Perth viewers.
My gosh, that many hits, refreshes of coming back and forth.
Well, I feel like every time I close it, I close it and then I go, wait, what was it again?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've got to look at it again.
Now, Brave Cobra has a follow-up question here, and this is pretty good. So we've got the copyright aligned on the bottom, and we'll have whatever footer information we decide to put there. But how would we let the left bar go to the bottom and still have the footer text in the middle of the page? So not just in the middle of the right cell. Is that what you're suggesting, Brave Cobra? But have this come all the way down, but still have it centered to the entire width. That's tricky.
So I think there'll be a way that we can do this.
Okay.
We're going to have a look. So in Grid, there is actually a way that you can overlay content in cells.
Okay.
So just because something's already in there doesn't mean you can't put something there as well.
Okay.
So we're going to try this. So we're going to assign CSS.
So the aside was the left menu
Yes.
that we have over there. We still have to put content back in there.
Yeah. So I'm going to use the grid row property, which that's similar to, so for the footer, we defined grid column start and grid column end.
Yeah.
The shorthand for that one is actually grid column 1/-1, which is what we had here.
Okay.
So I'm going to get rid of the two of them. And so we then have a similar one, which is grid row. So I want to set our grid row to, again, we want it to go from the very start to the very end. Similar to the columns, each of these rows are numbered. So we want it to go from row line 1 to row line -1, because that's going to be the very end.
Okay. So I've learned quickly 1/-1
Yep.
is the full width of, or the full height.
And nope, that's over. That's then pushing our footer down.
And it actually added another row there as well.
Yes.
Valentine says the footer should not start at 1. Right. Right. The footer should start at -2. Am I right? Did I figure that out?
Yeah.
At height-wise.
Yeah, so we can define, so that means we just need to let it, but we don't want it to start at -2, because then hopefully when we move it up, -2, there won't be 3 rows anymore. So we do want to be defining this from the start. So if I set the footer to be grid row, I want it to be grid row grid row start 2, and I've spelled start wrong.
Thank you for the follow.
And if we give that a go, oh no, what have we done here?
Funny things happens with see this happens to all of us with CSS, doesn't it?
Yeah, so again, this is where the Firefox Grid Inspector is really useful, because it means I can overlay, I can have a look at what's going on here. Yeah, so this is where Grid will, you can either explicitly define where different sections are, or you can let it work it out. So what I'm going to do is, to try and sort this out, I'm just going to specifically tell it where I want it to go.
Okay.
So I'm going to change it to the footer. It should be grid row 2 to 3.
So that that's on from line grid row 2
Yep.
from the top. 1 is the topmost line at
Yep.
the top of the browser.
Yeah. So we've explicitly defined that it should be grid column 1 to -1 should go all the way across, and it should be from grid row 2, so starting in the second row to 3, which will be, so that's just spanning one row.
Okay.
Our
Okay.
side should be grid row 1/-1, grid column should be 1 to 2, and then I'll also add in for our main as well. So grid column should be 2.
Oh, Brave Cobra, don't worry about asking difficult question, right? This is how we learn. Let's figure it out.
Yep, that's basically it, is just try to work out how it's going. So this should be from grid column 2 to 3. And so you can notice here for these ones, I'm not using my negative numbers to define from the end, because we don't know if it's going to do funky things. So I want to be counting from the start.
Okay.
Grid row 1 to 2.
All right. So there we are, back to.
There we go. But now it's just a case of looking at so it looks.
Which one's on top?
Yep. So yeah, it looks like our side is sitting where we want it to be, and our footer is sitting there as well. So if we have a look at our footer element in the inspector, so if I get rid of the background on the footer element, and we refresh
right? If I just click it back and forth, I can see it's there.
Yeah.
So is there a way then for us to make this first cell?
We want
Right,
that.
the Z. We would do this with Z index.
Yes. So yeah, so I can set the Z index to 5 for the aside. But remember then, the Z index needs to be applied to basically something that hasn't got position static on it.
Okay.
Which this has probably got position static unless it's been set somewhere else. So I'm just going to set position relative. And so this will allow me to define a Z index on it, which this should... Yep, there we go. So if we have a look,
Hey, there we go.
there we go.
Nice. Where is it? Where is it? Just the way that it was asked for. Okay. That looks pretty, right? Just for a little bit of work that we did there, I've learned a lot about FlexGrid. The columns and being able to use the tools here to understand where things are being placed makes a lot of sense to me now. That with how we spanned the two cells of the grid in both directions, specified the indexing, the Z index, so it layered appropriately. That makes tremendous sense to me now. Okay, I'm feeling a lot better about how this was positioned and how we can use this going forward. We are out of time though. I'm looking at the clock and it's like, yeah, this is it. We're at the end of our time together. So thank you so much for joining us. Simon, somebody earlier, I missed the comment. Somebody said this is where we can make commits in CSS to ensure that we know we've got these changes together. So if you don't mind, I'm going to stop the editing that we've done here together, and I'm going to open up, where is it? The GitHub. It's not live share. Where is it? The GitHub plugin here, so I can do the commit from within Visual Studio, so that we get the collaboration recorded here. No end then yet. Hang on. Where is it? Source control. I don't see it. Where is it? Source control explorer, right? No, not that one. Do I have GitHub installed? Do I have the GitHub installed? No, I don't have it installed. Rats! I can't do it from here. I want to be able to commit the changes. You know what I mean? No. We're just in time for the end. That's right, TBD Gamer. Sorry about that. We're being told that we're out of time here. I'll just do the commit on regular PowerShell. Then we'll lose the, what's it called? We'll lose the collaboration information. Bummer.
Yep.
So I will do that. We'll commit. When things start coming down to the end here, and we've got to wrap up. I like to play the Mario music. All right. So learned some CSS together with Amy Kapernick. Cool. And I will push that to my local repository so we can take a look and work with that. Thank you so much for your help. This was great.
No worries.
I really appreciate it. Yes, I know I'm in the dev branch. It's okay. And the last thing that I'm going to do before we head out here is I'm going to see if there's somebody out there that we can raid. Send all of our viewers over to. They've moved things on the Twitch UI for me. So this was. There we go. Get that loaded up. You know what? Let's send folks over here. This was great. I'm going to go back. I've got some source code to work with here. I've got some websites that I can take a look at and learn more about. Yes, I did commit to my dev branch, but we'll clean that up a little bit, and I'll feel really good about that.
Yep.
I want to set us up to rate our friend Jason Langsdorf. He's one of the folks that works on Gatsby.
Yep.
So, friends out there in the chat room, if you're watching, let's set up that raid. if you are... There we go. If you're a subscriber, grab that first line of text. If you're not a subscriber, that's okay. Copy the second line of text. Get ready to say hello to our friend Jason. He's another member of the Live Coders team, writing code live here on Twitch. All right, friends. Take care. This video, like my other videos, will be available over on YouTube a little bit later in the week. Thanks so much, Amy. I really appreciate you joining
No worries.
us.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care, friends, and I will see you Tuesday. I'll be back. All right? Have a good one.